Well, welcome everyone. This is our last of 5 very special Culture Change Coalition online conference sessions. It's sort of like we've been at a conference all together and we spread it all over 1 month, and it was a lot, but it was awesome. I think so. But we're looking for feedback now, how you think it went, ideas for the future. To be honest, we're looking at doing it in person in this next year, and we're looking at 5 locations. So I'd love to know from each of you, if you had to plan a conference in 5 locations in your state, what would they be? Could you put that in the chat box, please? And I also love the subject, and I also love our teacher. So I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Linda Shell. Get this, she's also known as the leadership doctor because she has a lot of experience in leadership, and she's a PhD kind of doctor. Plus, you'll hear her story. Growing up in Oklahoma, she had a dream to become a nurse, and then Oklahoma to Chile, Minnesota. And after raising her kids, she became an RN like you, Lalani. We have several RNs, but Lalani just said that. And after a variety of nursing settings like trauma and clinics and labor and delivery and more, long-term care really changed her direction, she says, and her life. And so after she got a doctorate in nursing education, she has led, lots of different nursing teams. She's been in executive leadership roles. She consults with organizations, taught at many conferences, engaged leaders in aging services all across the country. It's true. If you had time, she could tell you. And she is a subject matter expert in clinical practice, in resident care, in leadership development, and building resilient teams. That's very timely. I know Linda from her work with something called the Impera Consortium in Minnesota. It's a group of more than one organization that really looked at implementing best practices, kind of like in real time is how I would think of it. Is that a fair way to say it, Linda? And I also know her as just an excellent teacher. Wow. Overall, and then also one of her expert subjects is this, what brings us all together tonight. She calls it restorative sleep, and you'll see why in a moment. You'll also see why she is the leadership doctor. She's very, very, sensitive to the situation you all find yourself in. So let's turn our attention to her, and thank you so much for coming, Linda.
Thank you for inviting me. And I'm just thinking of all of my travels everywhere I've not been to Wyoming.
Oh,
so yes. So, hey, there you go. Maybe I need an invite at some point. I would love it. So thank you all for joining me this evening and for engaging in this webinar. That sleep is so important, and probably most of you recognize that because when you don't get enough, you know how it impacts you. But we're going to really kind of dive into why that really happens. But I thought it would be interesting to just start out with asking you a question, and that is, how did you sleep last night? You think about how you sleep. Now, I heard somebody say they have a 3-year-old, and so my daughter has a 5-year-old, and I know how that can impact her sleep sometimes. But as you think about how did you sleep last night, how would you describe that? If we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you, this is known as the Epworth sleepiness scale. So grab a pencil and a little piece of paper you can scribble on, because I'm going to give you the chance to do a quick assessment of how you do when it comes to sleep. So for each one of the questions that are about to show up on these little stars here, you're either going to say that during this activity you have no chance of dozing, and that would be a 0. Give yourself a 1 if you have a slight chance of dozing. Give yourself a 2 if you have a moderate chance of dozing, and a 3 if you have a high chance of dozing. So here we go. So Carmen, hit that enter and we'll get the first one. So whenever it's coming, there we go. So whenever you're sitting and reading, what is your chance of dozing? Give yourself a score there. Okay, the next one. Whenever you're watching TV, what is your chance of dozing? My husband would say if it's during one of his murder mysteries, it's going to be really high because I have no interest in those. Okay, next. Sitting inactive in a public place. If you're just sitting there, not doing a lot, what are your chances of dozing? Next. If you're sitting and talking to someone, that could be interesting, couldn't it? If you're sitting there talking to somebody and you actually doze off. But what are your chances of doing that? Give yourself either 0, 1, 2, or 3. If you're sitting quietly after lunch, sometimes when your tummy's kind of full and you've had a relaxing meal, what are your chances? Next one. As a passenger riding in a car for 1 hour. So if you are riding in a car, you're the passenger, what are your chances of dozing? Next one. In a car while stopped for a few minutes. Now, I don't think this is a problem because I've learned that if I fall asleep at the red light, somebody will honk and wake me up and then I can go. So we're all good. So, but what are your chances in a car while stopped for a few minutes? And then our last one. What are your chances of dozing when you're lying down to rest in the afternoon with no interruptions? All right, so you should have some numbers there. So add those up really quickly. We'll give them just a minute to do that, and we'll flip to the next slide, and they'll see how you can interpret the score that you got. All right, so if you scored a 1 to 6, congratulations, you're getting enough sleep. Okay, if there is anybody in this crowd that is getting enough sleep, we want to know your secrets at the end of this webinar, because I've been doing this a long time and I don't come across very many people, especially who are working in this field, who are getting enough sleep. If you got a 7 to 8, your score is average. If you are 9 plus, you need further assessment and you need to seek the advice of a sleep specialist. Or you just need to pay attention to this webinar because I'm going to give you some suggestions and recommendations that you can apply not only for the elders that we're taking care of, but to yourself. And this is what I love about talking about sleep, because it has application for us as caregivers. It also has application for our elders, and even being able to share things with family members that they'll be able to implement in their life. So flip to that next slide. And what you'll see is that the Centers for Disease Control has actually declared sleep deprivation to be a national epidemic. And probably if we look at the scores that all of us just had on that, we can see why that is the case. But here's the other thing that I know about that, and I bet you some of you can relate to this. Whenever you have a lot to do, how many of you tend to stay up late, or like, I'll just get up earlier in the morning, right? The first thing we tend to default to is cutting off on our sleep because we don't always recognize the value of that. That's the same thing that happens to us when we're taking care of our elders. Many times we do things that actually interfere with their sleep because we don't always recognize the value of sleep and that healing properties that sleep have. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. So this next slide is just a picture of my mom, and Carmen has seen this picture numerous times because first thing, I adored my mom. She lived to be almost 101. She passed away about 1.5 years ago, not from COVID, but it did play a role because my mom lived in an assisted living and was unable to go out, walk around, move around, do all the things that you need to do when you get older, which ultimately impacted her sleep. Because one of the things that I taught my mom after learning a lot of this material was the importance of sleep. And my mom recognized that it was important for her to get good quality sleep, that she felt much better during the course of the day. And I am going to say, and my family members will tell you as well, that they believe that because my mom often was really focused on the importance of sleep, it's why she lived as long as she did. So the next slide is just a real quick overview of what we're going to talk about. So there's 2 parts today. The first one, I'm going to talk about the science of sleep, and we're just going to talk a little bit about how the body works when it comes to sleep. We're going to look at the circadian rhythm, and then we're going to explore the value of physical activity and social interaction on sleep quality. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back. And in part 2, I'm going to share with you some person-centered strategies or approaches that can enhance the quality of sleep. We're going to look at some best practices for improving sleep in the nursing home setting or the long-term care setting. And then we're going to look at the impact of sleep on employee or caregiver retention. On the next slide, you'll see
I am
that,
the nurse.
that we what I put together was can we mute?
Yeah, I got it. Sorry about that.
Thank you. No problem. So that happens sometimes. So what I wanted to suggest to you today is, because I'm actually going to give you a lot of information. I'm going to give you some tips. I'm going to give you some little things that you can do that you can just start implementing right away. Because here's the one thing that I know about people that are working in this field right now is that you are stretched thin. Given your best efforts, you're stretched thin, and you don't always have a lot of time. And so when you start you hear about a lot of these things, you're going to get excited and think, I really want to do that. I'm going to give you a lot of little things that that you can do as a caregiver, that you can do to just help different elders in different situations. So it doesn't have to be some big time-consuming approach that you have to take, but just some little things that I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you some big ideas or some bigger things that you can do. But what I want you to do today is think about what are some of your big ideas when it comes to what you personally could do, what you could take responsibility for to help improve sleep. And the next slide is just a few questions for you to think about that you might want to, as you're listening to what I have to say. For example, what did you learn that would be important for providing person-centered care? What can you share with your peers? A lot of them are not able to attend. They're not going to be able to engage in this. And so I believe that one of our responsibilities is, whenever we have the privilege of gaining new information that can be helpful, is to take it back and to share it with not only your peers, but also with your elders that you are caring for, as well as family members. And I'm going to actually give you some tips that you can offer to even family members that can help. And then maybe your supervisor or your manager is unable to attend, and maybe there's a situation that's been kind of frustrating. And after you participate today, you're going to think, hey, I know something we could try. And you might suggest that. And then what one thing, and I always just say, if there's one thing that you can start doing, I'd love for you to be able to do all of it, but I know you're all busy and it takes time to do that. So what one thing can you do to start making a difference when it comes to sleep? All right, so in this next slide, so we're going to get into now talking about sleep. Okay, that doesn't look like that. Hit the next slide. There we go. Thank you. All righty. So all of us probably have cell phones, right? And we know that during the course of the day, we use our cell phone all day long, and it slowly depletes the battery. And at night, we have to plug it in and recharge it. Did you know that our bodies are exactly like that? When we've slept all night, we get up in the morning and our bodies are all charged up and they're ready to go for the day. As we go through the day, we discharge all of that energy. And at night, we need to plug in during the sleep cycle and we need to recharge our battery. And so it's important for us to understand the value of being able to do that and getting good quality sleep. So in this next slide, it's just a little description of how I came across this information. I had the privilege of being in Minnesota and working on a grant, and we were actually given $7 million to improve sleep. And we, of course, had to measure it. Anytime they give you a lot of money, you have to do a lot of measuring. And so we had to do that. Those indicators are there. We looked at pain. We looked at antipsychotic use, worsening room movement, and behaviors. I hate that word. Because it's really unmet needs and a person trying to communicate, but that's how the MDS uses it. So we had to go with that. But again, that was the program, and that's how we look to measure. But here's what our goals were for that program: undisturbed sleep at night. Undisturbed sleep. We wanted our elders to be able to sleep 8 good solid hours during the course of the night, and then to be fully awake and engaged during the day. And we also wanted to be able to increase our staff or our caregiver satisfaction by implementing this program. Because you know what I've learned? When our elders are happy, our staff are happy. and our families are happy. It kind of is a trickle down effect. And so that was really what our goal was for this program. So when we start talking about sleep, the best way to describe it is like a balancing scale. So the first chemical that we have is serotonin. So in the morning, when the sun starts coming up, our retina starts to receive light and it generates serotonin, and the serotonin wakes us up and elevates our mood. The more sun that we're able to get into the retina, the more elevated and the more awake and alert that we become. One of the things that is most disturbing to me is whenever I am visiting as a consultant in a nursing home, and people are in their dining room and they're serving breakfast, and I see elders that are asleep in their chairs or in their wheelchairs. And I bet you some of you have observed that. And the first thing that tells me is that our elders are not getting good quality sleep at night. Because just think about it. How many of you get up in the morning and go sit down at breakfast and you fall asleep in your chair? Probably not very many. If you do, you're thinking, wow, I need to go back to bed, right? But we tend to be awake and alert. And then so we go throughout the day, we're getting high levels of light, but then in the evening when the sun starts to go down, we quit receiving the sunlight, and darkness starts to come into our retina, and it elevates our melatonin. So the serotonin goes down, the melatonin goes up, and you all probably are very familiar with melatonin in that it makes us sleepy. And higher doses of melatonin, so more darkness creates more melatonin and helps us sleep at night. A great example of that is whenever we have daylight savings time and we start messing with the clocks, right? And you can probably think about that. And I think about this in Minnesota, and you may experience some of this in Wyoming because you're in a more northern climate, right? But in the wintertime in Minnesota, the sun starts going down about 4:30 in the afternoon. And what happens at 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon, everybody starts getting really sleepy. Pretty soon it's like, man, is it time to go to bed? Oh gosh, it's only 6:30 and I'm thinking that I need to go to bed. Whereas fast forward in the summer, the sun in Minnesota stays up until 9:30 or 10 o'clock. I'm outside gardening at 10 o'clock and I'm like wide awake and I'm doing great, right? So excuse me, that's that difference in that serotonin that keeps me awake and the melatonin. So that's really important. And the serotonin, we go to the next slide there, is what's known as a feel-good chemical. And it actually, serotonin is what they treat people who have depression with because it elevates our mood. It's triggered by bright light, but it also promotes digestion, healing, and thinking processes. A lot of us think of serotonin as maybe being an antidepressant, but how many of you knew that it actually helps promote digestion, that our food digests better whenever we're exposed to high levels of light, which results in serotonin? And then likewise, the melatonin is triggered by darkness and it induces sleep. And then whenever it starts to lower, it actually causes us to wake up in the morning. So these are important chemicals, and all of these relate to what's known as our circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm is that internal biological clock that we all have. It controls hormone production, blood sugar, blood pressure, growth, immune function. We could spend probably 4 hours just talking about that. But the next slide is a picture of the circadian rhythm. And I like to show this. I know I have some nurses and I have some, what were you, a non-nurse, Carmen? And even non-nurses can understand how the importance of this natural circadian rhythm. But I like to point out a couple of things on this. But what's really, so look down in that lower left and you'll see at 2 a.m. Is our deepest sleep. Now, I don't know about your facilities, but I've been in a lot of nursing homes across the country. And one of the things that I've learned is that many times 2 a.m. is when caregivers tend to make rounds and start to check on elders and turning and repositioning, things like that. Well, our deepest sleep is at 2 a.m. That's probably not a great time for us to be waking somebody up. So there's just one example of how we are off of that natural circadian rhythm. And here's another one that I'm going to show you just for a couple nurses, but the rest of you will be able to relate to that. The sharpest rise in blood pressure is at 6:45 in the morning. So between 6 and 7, your blood pressure is naturally higher than it is the rest of the day. Many times as nurses, the first thing we do in the morning is make rounds and take blood pressure. Do you think that we could be measuring somebody's blood pressure inaccurately because it's that just happens to be their high point? Shouldn't we be measuring maybe the high point and the low point and looking at some averages? And then one more thing that I like to show, and it's kind of on my screen, I can only halfway see it, and it's down there at 22:30, which is 10:30 at night. And it says that bowel movements are suppressed. When I first started working in a nursing home, one of the things that I had to do when I worked the evening shift was give all the residents a suppository at night before they went to bed. Now, if bowel movements are suppressed at 10:30 at night, why would we give somebody a medication that is trying to speed up the bowel? We're kind of working against ourselves, right? And if we had a lot of time, we could see a variety of ways that we as humans, and even us as nurses, and then just us who are taking care of elders, have kind of gotten off of our natural circadian rhythm. One more thing is at 1700, which is at 5 p.m. in the evening, is our greatest cardiovascular and muscle strength. That's actually when you're supposed to work out. How many of you at the end of the day can't wait to get to the gym and work out? I'm thinking not so many, right? But we actually have a lot of energy and strength at that time. And that's one of the best times of day for people to actually just walk. Thinking of the elders that we're taking care of, it would be a great time for a walk. So there's just a couple of examples that I like to show when it comes to that circadian rhythm and the importance of that. Okay, so let's just go into sleep architecture. Now that we've talked about serotonin, melatonin, we've looked at the circadian rhythm. There are actually 3 segments when it comes to sleep architecture. And the first one, that light sleep, is that stage 1 and 2. Deep sleep, stage 3 and 4, that's that 2 a.m. in the morning, and then REM, rapid eye movement. And we'll look at these a little bit deeper, but it's essential that we get 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep. Our bodies were designed to sleep 7.5 to 8 hours during the night, 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep. So not waking up, cycling through all of these segments. And then our body actually has the natural tendency to wake up. You could even get up and go to the bathroom, get a drink, and go back to sleep and sleep another 4 hours. So it's really important, though, for us to understand that, because that tells us that even for elders, that maybe we do need to check on them, or maybe they do need to get up and go to the bathroom, or maybe they do need reposition. What if we could, in our discovery process of learning more about that elder, we could identify when that time is, so that we could be thoughtful and about how we do that rather than waking them up. So this next slide gets us into stage 1. And this is when persons begin to relax, and often you'll twitch or jerk. Some of you can think of times when you were sitting in your chair, and I don't know about you all, but I can just be sitting on the couch for a minute, and all of a sudden I'm kind of dozing, and then I hear a noise, and whoop, it kind of wakes me up, right? So that's that stage 1. It's very light, easily aroused, and reacts to environmental noise. The next one is stage 2, and this is when our eye activity stops, and we're only aroused to loud noises, and our heart rate starts to slow down. Stage 3 then is whenever our brain is completely at rest, all eye movement and muscle activity ceases, and we're in what's known as that deep sleep or slow wave sleep. So it takes us about 2 hours to get into this sleep. So up until this point, it's really easy for people to be aroused. And here's what often happens in some of our settings is that maybe our elders, maybe an elder went to bed at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And then in a lot of nursing homes, we have shift change at 10, 10:30, 11, kind of depends. A lot of people have moved those around a little bit, but generally after our elders are asleep, and what happens? It's loud, and they're just in those early stages of sleep, and they wake up. And what happens is they get caught in that stage 1 and 2, and they're not able to move into stage 3 because they are experiencing high levels of noise. So let's go to the next slide. And this is stage 4. This is known as pre-REM. And this is where our physical healing starts to occur. And this is so important. And this is why, if nothing else, you take away from this presentation, this is why letting people sleep 4 hours of uninterrupted is so key, because this is when physical healing occurs. As we think about our elders, many of them are experiencing different disease processes, chronic disease, acute disease. Some of them maybe it could be in a post-acute setting where they've had surgery, maybe they've been in the hospital. I mean, we have people across the gamut that are often living in nursing homes. We have people that are end of life, and maybe people who are there who have some level of cognitive impairment. But almost all of them need some type of physical healing, meaning that their body needs to be able to regenerate. And this is when this happens. So now they've gone into deep sleep, and now they're going into this very restful stage, and their muscles and organs are regenerated. What muscles and organs are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the heart. That's really important. How many of our elders have congestive heart failure? We're talking about kidneys. How many of them are experiencing some type of kidney failure? We're talking about the brain. How many of them are experiencing some type of cognitive impairment? We need them to get as much physical healing, as much of their muscles and organs regenerated as possible. And so that's in that stage 4 sleep. And then we get into the next phase, which is that REM sleep. And probably many of you have heard about REM sleep. And this is when our heart rate increases and our blood pressure rises. This is the busiest time of day in that natural circadian rhythm. This is the busiest time of day for our brain. And muscular paralysis occurs. And some of you can probably relate to this, because if you're suddenly waken up during the night by maybe something really loud, or we had the smoke alarm in our house go off because the batteries had expired or whatever. And if you've had that happen, you know how suddenly that wakes you up. What you'll notice is that your body can't move for a second. And it's because of that muscular paralysis. Now that's really important, because muscular paralysis protects our bodies, because this is when we're having dreams. And if we were not paralyzed, we actually might get up and people can be injured. And you probably have heard of people who are sleepwalkers, and people who've maybe gone out in the cold, or have done something during the course of the night. That's actually a sleep disorder, to walk in your sleep, because it puts you at risk. So our body is paralyzed, but our heart rate is high, our blood pressure is high. And this is when emotional and psychological healing occurs. The best way I know to describe this is when you think about the desktop that you have on your computer, or maybe even your phone. But on my computer, my husband will often walk by and remind me that I've left too much stuff on that desktop, and that I need to move that into files. That is exactly how our brain operates at night. So at night, all of the experiences of the day, all of the emotions that we have felt during the day, good, bad, happy, any of those emotions, they're sitting out there on our brain. And during this REM sleep is when our brain starts to clear all those off and file them away. This is why that we often have dreams or even nightmares. If you can think about a time when you had a dream or a nightmare, I can tell you that it was connected to a high level of emotion. Maybe you woke up crying or you woke up scared. It's because your body, your brain is trying to filter through all those emotions and work through those and tuck them away. So it's like a detox for fear, anger, happiness, and sadness in our brain. It also helps to cement our memories. People who sleep 8 hours at night have much, much better memories than those who have fragmented sleep. I can tell you about a study at the University of Minnesota where they took students, and probably some of you have experienced this when you were in college and you had a test and you just cram the night before, and you're like, I'll stay up until 2 in the morning and I'll study and then I'll go to bed and then I can take that test in the morning. They actually studied students that went to bed, that studied a normal time and were in bed by 10 or 11, got a good night's sleep and took the test, versus those that stayed up, tried to cram till 2 a.m. and then got up and took the test. Who do you think performed much better on the test, even though they did not study as long? The people who had good quality sleep, because that sleep is cementing those memories. When I think about our elders, and maybe some of them that already have some level of cognitive impairment, they're already having trouble with their memories. What a great way that we can help them to at least recover as much as possible and to detox from some of those emotions that they feel during the course of the day, just by reinforcing this natural sleep. All right, so what are some of the reasons why our elders do not get good quality sleep? Well, believe it or not, they did a study in nursing homes across the US and Canada, and they identified the reasons why people in nursing homes do not get good quality sleep. And this is the list. And if you'll flip to the next slide, Carmen, we'll see which is number 1, 10. So number 1 was noise. But where did the noise come from? Staff, caregivers, change of shift, talking during the nighttime. Light was another one. What we found when we were working on this, and what I've since discovered just being out and working with caregivers that are out in the field, is that they often leave the lights on all night long. How many of you could sleep all night if your bedroom light was on? It'd be really distracting, right? Sometimes the sleeping environment, the surface, maybe the temperature, the bedding, maybe even just smells that were in the room. Guess what one of those smells are? Has anybody ever microwaved your meal in the middle of the night while people are trying to sleep? It doesn't always smell great. Or, hey, microwave the burnt popcorn, right? So number 4, napping during the course of the day. Our bodies are not designed to napping. We'll talk about that in a minute. Number 5 is medications interfering with sleep. Number 6 is continence needs, needing to go to the bathroom. I'll give you some tips on how we can address that. Number 7 is pain. And number 8, positioning. And then number 9, and not enough activity. So remember that our bodies are like a rechargeable battery. So we need to exert all of our energy. If we sit around all day long, if our elders just sit around during the day, they don't have things to do, they don't have social interaction, they're not moving, they're not walking, they're not wheeling themselves, whatever that is that works for them, they're not going to exhaust all of their physical energy. And then last, number 10 is going to be diet. Diet can have a big impact. And I'm going to talk about those and give you a couple of tips in that in a minute. So if you want to flip to the next slide. So what is the significance? What happens whenever our elders do not get enough sleep? And it's important for us to really be able to recognize that many of the things that are on this list are things that we can do something about. And one of the first questions I asked, I just had a friend call me about her grandmother that is in a nursing home, and she's not doing well, and she's confused and all sorts of things. And you know what was my first question? How is she sleeping at night? How's she sleeping at night? Because what we know is that people who we can improve cognitive impairment, right? We just talked about that by helping people sleep better. We can reduce some of that agitation, because many times it's because they're tired and they don't know how to communicate that comes out as behavior. It's really an unmet need for sleep. And then delirium, that's that short-term confusion, really common in people who've just been in the hospital and are newly admitted into a post-acute setting in a nursing home. It also results in increased anxiety and depression, because remember, at night, we're detoxing from all those emotions. If we don't have the opportunity to do that, it's going to increase our anxiety. Did you know that it also increases our blood glucose level when we don't get quality sleep? Kind of makes sense, though, if we're restoring our organs, and one of those is our pancreas, which is critical to managing our blood sugar. And then chronic fatigue, frequent napping, just an overall decline in your ability to walk and your ability to feed yourself and just support yourself. And then in falls and accidents. Anytime I'm working with an elder that has been having falls, one of the first things that I want to do is take a look at their sleep. How are they sleeping at night? Because once again, if we're not helping them get good quality sleep at night, their legs may be weak, and that may be contributing to their fall. Or if they've had maybe one fall and then and now they're really sore from that fall and they're not able to sleep at night, it starts to interfere with their sleep, they have an increased risk of having a second fall because they did not get good quality sleep because of the pain, the discomfort they're having from falling and hitting the floor. And what we've discovered is that many times our elders that continue to have falls, it's because they're having pain at night and they're not sleeping well, which means that their legs are not getting restored, their muscles are not getting restored. Okay, so the next one here. So I would love to tell you that if you have an elder that's having trouble sleep, do this and it'll work. But you probably already know, if you've worked in this field and you've cared for elders for very long, that when you've seen one elder, you've seen one elder, right? And that's why it's so important to have person-centered care, because each one is so different. And you learn that whenever you start trying to even help improve sleep, trying to figure out, what time do you like to go to bed? What time do you like to get up in the morning? All those things are really important. And it's important for us to understand that. So if you want to flip to that next slide. So it's a lack of assessment or discovery, which I love that word. Us nurses, we're so clinical, but that discovery process of asking people. So we actually did a small survey we had 16 facilities that were participating in our program. And we did a survey to just see for any elder that had just come into our community, what was the average time that they went to bed? Now, most of them were going to bed between 8 and 9 o'clock. The average time, 10:30. They went to bed. Now, there's the significance to that, because the nightly news is on from 10 to 10:30, and most of them watch the news and the weather and sports, and then they like to go to bed, right? Well, we didn't do a very good job at honoring their personal preference of helping them to go to bed when they wanted to, because we're putting them to bed much, much earlier, rather than letting them naturally get sleepy and be ready to go and lay down and have a good night's sleep. So this next slide just demonstrates, we actually had some of our elders wear a noise detector, and it told us the level of noise that our elders were being experienced during the night. And I can tell you that some of these wider waves that you're seeing, some of those are comparable to a vacuum cleaner being run. That's pretty loud. How many of you could sleep if you had somebody vacuuming in your room, right? So we identified all types of things that were were happening. We actually found that in many of the communities where we were at, we had caregivers that were stalking the table next to the bed while our elder is sleeping. I mean, it was just terrible. Once again, a lack of knowledge, right? So, and we had, TVs that were on, we had phones ringing, we had all kinds of things that were going on. So that was one of the first things that we had to think about. How are we doing with noise? And just an FYI, one of the things that we did is we required the director of nursing and the administrator to come and to sit with a blindfold for 1 hour on every shift and to just listen for noise. And many of them were shocked at how much noise was actually going on, because when we're there and we're used to being in that environment, we don't think that much about it. And for our caregivers who are working at night, it's like their daytime, and so they're awake and they're talking and whatever. But we learned a lot by having administrators and directors of nursing just sit with a blindfold and listen to all of the sound. And then the next problem that we identified was lighting. And I don't have time to talk about all of this today, because white light is different than yellow light and is different than blue light. But what we did find is that when our elders are exposed to white light, it actually stops the production of melatonin, which means it's going to wake them up and they're going to have a hard time going back to sleep. And we had caregivers who were turning lights on to do turning and repositioning. We had caregivers that were turning lights on to check on people, take them to the bathroom. There's a variety of things, hug lights and different things. If you have questions about some of those, you can email me and I can tell you more about that. But we identified a variety of ways that we could actually go in and check on a person and assist them without having to shine lights in their eyes and to wake them up. And then the next thing, which I talked about a little bit earlier, was napping. And more than 30 to 40-minute nap during the course of the day interferes with nighttime sleep. The reason for that is our body gets confused. We're not designed to sleep during the daytime. We can take a little, I call it a little cat nap, a little snooze for 30 minutes or so, but to actually lay down in a bed, it confuses our body. Our body, from the day we were born, when your mom wanted you to go to sleep, what did she do? She laid you in the crib and you learned that that was time to go to sleep. You get older, they put you in your bed. It's time to go to sleep, right? So our brain is trained that when you lay down in bed, that it's time to go to sleep. So when somebody lays down 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, or 1, 2 in the afternoon, their body is confused and they may sleep a couple of hours and they will not sleep during the night. It will interfere with them. So napping is really one of those areas to take a look at and to think about, how could I help eliminate, or maybe just a little cat nap, or just maybe some more relaxation time versus laying somebody down. And then the next one is medications. And medications are a big barrier to sleep for a variety of reasons. One, some of them have side effects that can keep us awake at night or make people very drowsy during the course of the day. And so for us as nurses, we need to be very thoughtful about the side effects of a medication, because we don't want to make somebody so drowsy they're going to be sleepy all day long. Maybe we want to time those a little better. We have people who take sleeping pills, and the sleeping pills can actually interfere with the natural circadian rhythm. There are some people that need to take those, but we have to be cautious in their use and make sure that we're working with the physician, because they can actually interfere over a period of time with natural sleep. And then diuresis. I talked before, we have a lot of people who have congestive heart failure, and they put out a lot of fluid during the night. In fact, elders often put out more fluid during the night because we lay down flat, we get some help from gravity, and we actually need to go to the bathroom more at night than we do in the daytime. That can be a problem when you're trying to sleep and you're trying to help someone, right? So in part 2, you don't want to miss, got to come back. I'm going to give you some suggestions on that. And then just making sure that the medications that we're giving people are actually working, and then that they're timed appropriately in the sleep cycle. And there's a variety of other things as well, but medications play an important role in helping people get good quality sleep with the timing. So not wanting to give those diuretics before someone goes to bed, not wanting to give them things in the morning that are going to make them sleepy, things like that. And then that next slide is around pain. And there's the newest research says that about 80% of people who live in nursing homes have some element of chronic pain. And I once had a physician tell me that there is a correlation between your age and how much arthritis you have in your joints. So if a person is 90 years old, 90% of their joints are experiencing some level of breakdown, which often contributes to pain. And we forget about that. And what I've learned, and I even learned this from my mom, is that many times our elders believe that when you're old, you hurt, and that's just part of your life cycle. That is not the case. There's a variety of things that we can do to help people, and one of them is good quality sleep at night. So making sure that we are assessing people for pain. And remember that our elders who may have some level of cognitive impairment, maybe they can't tell us that they're hurting, but maybe they are pushing us away because their shoulder hurts when we're trying to dress them, or maybe they don't want to stand up and we think they don't want to walk, but they just hurt whenever we're trying to help them stand up. So it's really important for us to pay attention to all of those clues that tell us that a person may be having pain, and making sure that we are able to treat that pain so that they can get good quality sleep. The other thing, and if you've ever gone and worked out, maybe you're like, oh, that felt so good, that workout was great. Then you go and lay down in bed and your muscles get cold. In about an hour or two, you're like, oh, yikes, everything is hurting, right? That's exactly what can happen to our elders. They're up, moving around, doing different things during the course of the day. And we ask them, do you have any pain? Oh, no, I'm doing fine. I feel good. Their muscles are all warmed up because they're moving around. But then we help them, get in bed and get all comfy in bed. And 2 hours later, oh, it hurts so bad. And do they tell us that? Not always, but many times they'll lay there for hours and experiencing that pain when we could have helped them with that. So next slide. And then I mentioned a couple times the turning repositioning. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about this in part 2, but what we did learn through this is that people don't necessarily have to be turned and repositioned every 2 hours. We can spread that out to 4 hours with some good work and doing that. But here's what I always tell people. Never in my nursing career did anybody say, wake people up and turn and reposition them. They taught me to turn and reposition. I worked in trauma. I think Carmen mentioned that. And I took care of head injuries. I learned real quick how to turn and reposition a head trauma without waking them up, because I knew we were going to have a really tough night if I woke them up. And same thing for our elders. There are ways that we can turn and reposition people. Don't turn the lights on. Just use a little light. Minimize the noise. Don't have conversations. And turning and repositioning doesn't mean turning someone all the way over. It's just 30%. That's not very much movement. So there's some things that we can do with that. So the next slide. So the goals of sleep improvement. And I think, Carmen, am I coming up on my?
Yeah, I think we're actually 5 minutes past, but that's okay.
Okay, well, this is the last slide, I think,
Perfect.
for my before we take a break.
Go
so
ahead.
Once again, what I've been talking about is ways that we can have undisturbed sleep at night for our elders. We can help them be fully awake, engaged during the day, and that we can also increase staff satisfaction when our elders are sleeping at night, and whenever they're feeling better, when they're wanting to be more active. Those are all positive things that we can do. So I think now questions, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So all right. Does anybody have questions? Are they going to put them in the?
Well, either way. So everyone, we want to follow what we agreed to in the grant. So we're going to sit here for 15 minutes of discussion. So I would really appreciate if someone would toss out a question or a comment to Dr. Linda.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something.
And I'd love to hear what already, maybe what has been a big idea or what has stood out to them as something they might could do, and maybe we could build on that a little bit as well.
And I'm curious if anyone is here right now that represents night shift. Our goal.
I don't.
And that's, yeah, go ahead. Brittany.
I don't have any questions yet, but I am super excited to get my nursing department to watch this little webinar, because this is fantastic and I cannot wait for them to hear some of it and see what we can change.
Go, Brittany.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yes, that's awesome. I love that enthusiasm and passion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are any of you doing some of this already?
Yeah. Or maybe doing something else that I haven't mentioned.
Right. We're kind of a small group, everyone. I'd really love it if, oh, you know what? Maybe you would love it if I pressed the button that says you can unmute yourself.
This is Cindy. I'm from Legacy in Gillette, and currently I work a Monday through Friday 8 to 5, but I started out my nursing career as a night shift nurse, and I always tried to find, I didn't like waking people up in the middle of the night either. I guess I just always tried to find patterns as a nurse. Can I find a pattern when someone's incontinent at night that I can help them get up and be continent to maintain their highest level of function? But I'm really curious if anyone has any newer ideas of how to find that. I don't like the culture of check and change, like you said, at 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Well, somebody is asking, and this might feed into that one a little bit, about how much REM sleep, deep sleep, and light sleep is needed. So it's 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep, and it starts at stage 1, which is that light sleep, and it goes into deep sleep and then REM sleep, and then we naturally wake up. It's a total of 4 hours. REM sleep usually lasts about it's about an hour in that cycle. The falling asleep is about 2 hours, and the deep sleep is about an hour. So that's not totally scientific, but that gives you a good idea of what that is. So to the question about finding that, I love that you're doing that, and that you already picked up on the importance of not waking people up. So one thing to think about is about what time people are either going to bed, or what time you notice that they're falling asleep, because that would tell you. So for example, if that were 9 o'clock, probably around 1, start paying attention to see if they're starting to wake up, 12:30 or 1, and starting to see if they'll wake up. I also want to mention, because that made me think I didn't mention it, the best REM sleep occurs in that second 4 hours of sleep, and in the last hour of the sleep cycle. And many times, some of the, as we talk about traditions in nursing homes, which many of them have no evidence to support whatsoever, but often, we have caregivers that are going in and waking people up at 6 and 7 in the morning, and we are taking people out of the most important REM sleep that they can get in the sleep cycle. And I always, and I've often thought about what, almost what a tragedy that is, that we've been oriented to doing that. Or I'll give you another example, and this isn't to criticize any discipline, but in post-acute settings, and I'm assuming some of you also have some post-acute settings as part of your nursing home, therapy comes and wakes people up at 6:37 in the morning, and starts, and because they want to do therapy early with people, sometimes before breakfast or whatever. And so thinking about how we can let people naturally wake up in the morning rather than waking them up. And it can be done. One of the campuses that we rolled out a big sleep initiative with. They took this on, they just wanted to dive right in, and they had some extra staff that they were able to do it. But one of the things that they did was they actually had to change their whole schedule, including they had housekeepers that came to work at 6 a.m. And get this, their job was to vacuum all the hallways at 6 a.m. in the morning. And they realized that they were waking up all of the elders that were on those hallways. So they were moved, and they did not come to work until 8 o'clock in the morning so that they could start their work and they wouldn't be disruptive. Yep, somebody is talking about the incontinent briefs that are designed to wick away, and that is one of the recommendations that we had as well for people that are incontinent. I'll give you a couple of other ones in part 2 as well, but that is so important, looking at those overnight briefs that wick the moisture away so people can still sleep and we don't have to disrupt them. Looking, is there any others in there? I don't want to miss anybody. These are all great comments. Thank you all.
Hey, Linda, I have a little piggyback question to Cindy's good, idea about trying to find someone's pattern and then trying not to wake people. I've always heard it as a best practice to teach and remind our teams to try to observe the person better. So like, use an obvious example. If I'm all curled up the last time you saw me, and now I'm all spread out the next time you saw me, I don't need you to reposition me and maybe chant waking me.
Yes.
Do you consider that a best practice? Is that being taught by nurses and CNAs and or not so much? And I'd be curious, anyone listening, did you learn that?
I would say it's not being taught as much as it should be. I'd love to hear if any of them have thought about that or.
Carmen, I would agree with you. I'm also wound care certified, and I think that the repositioning yourself is way more valuable than any repositioning we can do, because your body truly knows what position you need.
Yes, that's such an important point too.
Good. Cindy, but in the wound care world, is this being taught like, hey, everybody, keep in mind, be good observers so you don't have to wake people as much if they indeed move themselves?
Mm-hmm.
When I did my class, it wasn't directed at sleep. It was more wheelchair positioning. If they're positioning themselves in their wheelchair, then you don't have to, but I definitely think it applies to bed as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So here's another, just another point that just kind of comes to my mind. So, I don't know all of your communities and what it's like, but I know what it's like in general in the country right now when it comes to staffing, and some of the challenges in a lot of nursing homes are short-staffed, and many times that happens on the night shift. And I always think it's interesting that we have, we're trying to turn and reposition, and we're trying to, wake people up and do all these different things, when really, if we followed some of this best practices, it would not be as time consuming. And it would actually not require as much staff if we, or as many caregivers, if we actually implemented some of these best practices where we're actually letting people sleep at night. And we're, if we paid attention to, I love that example. I'm going to remember that. Then looking to see if what position they're in when you checked on them at this time, and then what position they're in. Because it's only 30% movement, which is not a lot of movement. So we could save a lot of time if we weren't so focused on thinking about we get so focused on, we have to do all these different things versus, what's best and, what's going to provide the best care and honor choices for our elders that we're caring for. Did we lose Carmen?
Sometimes she has some wacky signal issues. She'll
Yes.
usually pop. She'll usually
she
pop
is.
back in, but it
Yeah.
takes her a minute.
Sorry about that, everyone. I
You're
have
back.
a question. Hey, Linda, we should compile a list. Like you just said, what are the best practices that don't take so much staff time?
Mm-hmm.
And like honoring sleep in general is one of
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
And then we just said like doing the good observation of people first
Mhm.
before you would move them. Do any
Mhm.
other just flow off the top of your head or anyone else?
Well, one that comes to mind is kind of on the front end is honoring people's choice for what time they want to go to bed, because many times what happens is we put them to bed literally at 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever, and that is not their natural time. So they get up, they put on their call light, they need a drink, or they remember that they need to go, because they're not ready to go to sleep. Their brain hasn't been prepared for that. I think it increases staff time. We saw that over and over when we were first working on this grant. And when we started to change that, as well as we found that when we let people naturally wake up in the morning, number one, they were happy. Many times they were happy, they were content to just lay there relaxing, waiting for someone to come and, provide whatever help that they needed, because they had slept so well. And it wasn't somebody waking up and, get up and get dressed, and, all those routines that we often have. But people were just much more pleasant, as any of us would be, right? When your alarm goes off at 5 a.m., it's not near as easy to get up as it is when you got to sleep in until 8 o'clock.
Yeah, good. Okay, I have a proposition, and I think I need to say it to you first, Linda, as our teacher. My proposition, everyone, is what if we only took a 5-minute break, if that would be okay? Maybe bathroom, get water, whatever, only 5 minutes, come right back and get going again, especially since it's into everyone's evening. Linda lives in Florida, it's even later for her. Not that that's an issue, but we tend to lose people. We tend to lose people. I've learned in this setup.
Yes.
And could anyone speak up? Would you appreciate that? Would you stick with us if we only did a 5-minute break? Go ahead.
That works for me.
Thanks, Brittany.
Works for
Anybody
me.
else?
Yep.
Great.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Cindy. Thanks, Cheryl. Okay, shall we go? 5 minutes?
Perfect.
All right, let's say it's 8:05. We'll all be back at 8:10, okay? That's in Eastern time, 6:05 to 6:10 Wyoming, okay? Thanks, guys.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Linda.
Yeah.
Linda, are you doing this presentation at 9 o'clock at night?
It is, it's 5 after 8 here. So
Okay.
no worries.
Speaking of circadian rhythms.
Yeah, I know. But hey, I'm one of those people that I'll be troublesome if I ever end in the nursing home, because I like to stay up until midnight. So you know how that
I'm like that too.
anyone can hear me, wouldn't this be cool to put together a list of practices that actually save a nursing home time? Why didn't anyone think of
Yes.
this? Why didn't anyone think of this? Brittany, we got to do it.
I'm in.
Good. All right. I'll draft it and send it out to everybody.
About it. I like it.
Cool. Let's see.
Ooh, Carmen, side note,
Tell
can
me.
you send me the PowerPoints from all of the different meetings? I have elders who would like them, and I'd also like to be able to stuff them in all of my manager's boxes.
Oh, Brittany, I had a feeling you wanted every single one. And I'm curious if anyone else on the line wants every single handout.
Carmen, I would love every single handout and all of the recording links and passwords. I have a similar idea.
Good. Cindy and Brittany, man, you guys are making things happen. This is awesome. I think I'll just, man, oh man, that's going to be a big email, but I should maybe just send it to everyone on my list, huh? They can delete it if they don't want it.
Exactly.
And, yeah, by the way, guys, I'm working with Mountain Pacific. They do have most of them already up there. And so I thought I would actually start with them, because if I could just lead you to one spot, that would be really handy for me and you.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. So bear with me. I started today, and I'll probably work with them again tomorrow, and pretty darn, maybe tomorrow even, we'll have them all up there. Okay.
Awesome.
And,
yeah, we talked in our coffee meeting today about getting it out, making sure if you missed a session, let's get them on it. And then we're going to meet together as leaders and see, now that we're all excited about it, what can we do?
Good. Yes. Carrie's saying she'd like them all too. Thanks, Carrie. Yes. And I see you brought up caregiver consistency, Carrie. I'll mention that to Linda. And are you there, Linda?
I'm here.
We could probably, oh, Linda, there was one comment. It's just a comment about caregiver consistency. CNAs really get to know residents and their routines when they can be consistent. Yes. A good point.
Yes. And in fact, I almost mentioned that a while ago, in that when we started working on this program, or this PEP, the nurses were, some of our conversation was, well, how are we going to know when people are waking up and, whatever. And our nursing assistants were fantastic. They're like, oh, so-and-so wakes up at 3 a.m. every morning, and it's a great time to take her to the bathroom. We're like, this is great. They were so on top of that. We were so impressed.
Good. And Linda, if if my internet goes out again, it shouldn't, but it might. No one knows. You just keep talking. You
just keep going.
You move through your handout. Don't you worry, everybody. Yep. I'll be right back if it were to happen. And why don't we? Should I go to the next slide, perhaps? And I'm ready if you are. Oh, I missed the break time slide. Sorry. That's so cute. With someone.
So now we're gonna go until 5 till. Am I right?
Oh, let's all think.
Since we changed up because it's 45 minutes.
Yes.
And it's 8:10. Am I doing math? Yes. Math is not my.
I can't do math when I have to speak out loud. Someone help me.
I think 5 till.
I think so too.
Is that correct for anyone that knows math?
Somebody.
Yes, ma'am.
Answering. Thank you. We got confirmation.
5 till.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So, and I'm going to do my best to not talk too much, because you know how much I love this topic, and I could keep us until midnight, but that wouldn't be good because they need their sleep.
To get sleep.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can just push me along, Carmen, if I start talking too much about some of this stuff. So, because I love it.
Cool. All right. It's all you, my dear.
Are you ready? All righty. Okay. So I like to open this section because now we're going to talk about some things that we can actually start doing, whether it be a small thing or some bigger things. But I like to remind people because I think it's important for us to know that change is harder than we think. And I am going to give you an example. So grab your pencil and just a piece of scratch paper. If you are right-handed, I want you to write your name, sign your name with your left hand 3 times. If you're left-handed, I want you to sign your name with your right hand 3 times, and just do that as quickly as you can.
What fun.
3 times with your non-dominant hand, write your name.
You're not going to know, you're not going to believe this, Linda. In college, I had a friend, we sat down at the desk, we were RAs together, and we loved trying to be ambidextrous.
Yeah.
I haven't done it since then, though.
You'll be better than some then.
I don't think so. Kind of fun.
So I like to use this activity, and you all could use this as well if you're working with your caregivers or your nurses or activities, whatever that may be, just to get people thinking about the challenge of change. Because I'm going to just guess, because I've done this activity a lot, that writing with your non-dominant hand did not go nearly as well as it would have with your other one. Now, if I had you just sign your name 3 times real quickly with your dominant hand, you probably wouldn't even have to think about it, right? But whenever I asked you to do it with your non-dominant hand, how many of you had to figure out how to hold the pencil just right? And you're like, which way do you angle the paper? And probably it's not your finest signature that you've ever done, right? So whenever I always want to be cognizant of this, and I of course talk a lot about change when I'm doing leadership training, but I think it's important in any type of change, and that what we're asking people is that the way that they have been doing something for a long time, because we have many people who've been working in this field a long time and have been doing it the same way for many years. And now we're saying, we want you to do it a different way. It's uncomfortable. They're going to have to think about it. They're going to have to think about, oh, well, how do I hold the paper? Or, oh, if I'm not going to be waking up our elders, but I'm just going to wait, how do I do that? How do I process all this information? So the importance of being cognizant that change is hard and it takes time. And but if we can give people a lot of encouragement, and I think sometimes when we're short-staffed or when we're just really busy or whatever, we kind of push people and then they push back and they don't want to do it because we don't give them that space. So just keep that in mind as you are excited and enthusiastic about all these ideas, that that change is it's a process. And here's my next recommendation. Oh, I'm going to get on my soapbox about how to make change happen quickly. But one of the ways to do that is to, when you start talking about some of your ideas, look for the people that get really excited about it. And they're like, hey, yeah, that's really great. Don't try to force it on everybody, but get what's called the guiding coalition, a small group of people that will get excited, and then they can start to influence other people. It will go much quicker and it'll be much more productive, and it'll actually help the change stick if you're able to do that. So that's another suggestion. All right, so next slide. Because this is a skilled facility or nursing home population that we're really working with, a lot of people say, there's not really much about sleep on the MDS. There's not an indicator for sleep, but all of these indicators that you see that come right from the MDS are when people are having declines in these areas. These are telltale signs that the person may not be sleeping well at night. And one of our first opportunities is to just ask the question, how are you sleeping at night? Or how is that elder sleeping at night? And just see what's happening, because all of these things are outcomes that can be a clue to us as to a person is not getting good sleep. So for this next slide, I put assessment process, but we're actually talking about a discovery process. And here's some things that we can start to look at when it comes to improving sleep in elders is first thing is that looking to see what time, what would be their preference for going to bed and getting up. What's their usual sleep pattern? Some people like to fall asleep with the TV on. Some people hate having the TV on whenever they're going to sleep. What is their bedtime routine? All of us, if we had time, we could probably each share what our bedtime routine is. Maybe for me, you just saw it. I'm drinking hot tea. If you saw that mega cup that I was drinking out of, I love hot tea and I love to drink that before I go to bed. But finding out what's important to that person, what's their physical activity level. It doesn't matter if they're in a wheelchair or they have a walker or they're independent. How can we encourage more movement and what works really well for them? What about the sleep environment, light? Ask the family if the person is unable to communicate. And remember that often people have patterns of sleep. If I asked you, what time do you like to go to bed and what time do you like to get up? All of you would have a pattern, and that's probably been a pattern for you for a long time. And even on the weekends, right? When you're like, oh yeah, I don't have to get up and go to work. Oh, you wake up at like 6:30 in the morning. It's like, really? Because I could be sleeping in today, right? That's because we have this natural rhythm. Looking at napping, medications, smoking, and then foods. So I want to move along because I want to just talk about a few more of those, but it's really important to conduct root cause analysis. And probably some of you have been involved whenever maybe you've been trying to look at an elder who's having falls or having something else that's going on, and you've done root cause analysis. But what we want to do when it comes to sleep is just based on our assessment or our discovery, is this person getting adequate sleep? And then what might be some intrinsic factors? What's going on internally? Do they have pain? That would be an intrinsic factor. Is there something internally that's going on? Do they have an upset stomach at night? Is there a medication they're taking that makes their stomach upset? And then what are some extrinsic factors? Is there noise in the nursing home at night? Is there light? Are we having to turn and reposition them? And then what are some of those I put systemic, but it's actually should be systematic. What are some of the system issues that we have? For example, there are nursing homes that have policies around turning and repositioning. They have policies about what time or that maybe the night staff gets up part of the elders and maybe the day staff gets up the rest. So which means that 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, we're getting people up. Sometimes we have system issues that we have to take a look at. And then overall, how can sleep be improved? And the best place to start is to ask an elder, how did you sleep last night? I love asking this question of people. And sometimes they're actually taken back because nobody really asked them, how did you sleep last night? But it's a great way. If you're a nurse that's passing medications, if you're a caregiver that's helping someone dress, get in the habit of asking a person, how did you sleep last night? Because that is a great way for us to start to figure out how people are doing. Now, sometimes when we start thinking about improving sleep, it's like, oh, where am I going to start? Because maybe we can't touch everybody all at once. Maybe we're limited in our resources. So think about, do you have elders that have been having falls? That's a great place to start. Are they sleeping well at night? Maybe you have an elder that's been complaining of pain. How are they sleeping? Maybe you have one who has increased confusion or that ugly word behaviors. They have unmet needs, and we've been unable to figure out what's going on with this person and how are they sleeping at night, and start to look at these specific residents that maybe tend to rise to the top whenever you're having care conferences or whenever you're having discussions around your caregivers, or maybe families are really concerned about them. Start to ask about how are they sleeping at night. And then, so some of the things that we did, and I'll give you some tips on some of these, is We looked at reducing napping. We looked at reducing those nighttime disruptions. We looked at delaying what time people went to bed. We looked at natural wake up. And then we just looked at improving sleep efficiency. And sleep efficiency is that 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep for 2 different cycles. So when it comes to pain, this is an opportunity, as I shared with you before. We have many of our elders who have some level of breakdown in their joints, which what we would just know as arthritis. And so finding things that we can do to help reduce their pain. One of the things that we did was to try to find a medication that could be helpful. Now, normally, if you hear my presentations, I'm not a fan of a lot of medications. The research from CMS tells us that if a person is on 9 or more medications, they have a 100% chance of a drug interaction. And many times that can have a very negative outcome for the person. So I'm not a big fan, but when it comes to medicating people for pain so that they can sleep well at night, we worked really hard with the physician to find a medication. And surprisingly enough, the medication that was recommended to us by several geriatricians that you might want to approach a physician about, or maybe your medical director, was arthritis strength Tylenol. They only have to take it once in the morning and once before they go to bed. And it is a long-acting medication, and it has minimal side effects for pain. So Tylenol might be, or acetaminophen might be an option. You could work with your medical director. You could work with the physician to see if that might be something that would work. And also just a reminder, if you work with people who are suffering from dementia or some type of cognitive ability, and they have difficulty communicating pain, maybe they do it more visually. The Pain Ed scale is a really great tool for being able to assess pain in somebody who is unable to communicate that they may be in pain. And then I talked a little bit about acetaminophen, just starting with the basics. Remember, when we start getting into narcotics and things, we're going to run into a lot of side effects that can cause more harm than good sometimes. And then also being sure to schedule routine pain medication. Sometimes as nurses, we rely on our elders to tell us that they are hurting before we medicate them, rather than watching for some of those signs and symptoms other than them reporting pain. And so it's, and then also remembering, and I mentioned this earlier, if you have a person who has had a fall, if you've ever hit the ground, you probably remember the next day or so that you were sore and it hurt. And it always has baffled me and why. And I did this as a nurse because I didn't know, and no one ever taught me this in school, and why we are not medicating those elders that have had a fall so that they can still sleep good, so that they can regenerate their muscles, so they can gain their strength back. And we don't put them at more risk for falls. And then, so maintaining that therapeutic blood level when it comes to pain medication. Remember, it's important that those medications are taken on a regular basis so that we can elevate that therapeutic blood level, and we can keep it up at that therapeutic level. And if we don't, for example, we give them a morning Tylenol and we get that therapeutic level, but then when it starts falling at night, we don't give them that next one, it falls way below, and actually their pain can be increased because of that low, that subtherapeutic level. So it's really important for us to make sure that we educate nurses and any of our caregivers, even people. I know we have some activity professionals. You all can notice when somebody is having pain, and you can report that. You can just say, oh, is your shoulder hurting? Is your leg hurting? You know, sometimes when they're rubbing their legs or whatever, those are signs and symptoms of pain. So making sure that we treat pain. And I think I just stuck in, put the next slide up. I believe I gave them. This is the pain assessment. This is that pain ed scale. And I hope you're familiar with that. If you're not, take a look at that. That comes from Hartford Institute, and it's for assessing pain in people that are unable to report pain. But there's also something to be said for just as people get older, they just make the assumption it's okay to hurt. And they don't let us know that they're hurting. And so there's some other things on there that we might pick up. And then in the next one, I want to just come back to the conversation around turning and repositioning. Most of you are probably familiar with Barbara Braden, her from the Braden scale. And it's a skin assessment, but she has also worked with another researcher, Barbara Bergstrom, and they did a study, if you're not aware of this, and they looked to see if it makes a difference, turning and repositioning every 2 hours, every 3 hours versus 4-hour intervals, if people are on high density mattresses. Most care communities have high density mattresses, and we don't use spring mattresses anymore. And by the way, Barbara Braden's her skin assessment was done on people who were laying on spring mattresses. And it's an example why it's important for us to come back and relook at research and update that. And so what they found is that it made no difference for us to turn people at 2 hours and 3 hours versus 4. They had some of the same outcomes. So if you want to flip to the next one, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we can move somebody to 4 hours of turning and repositioning if they've been on 2 or 3, but it does mean that we need to look closely at how we can individualize that. And there is some research that suggests that turning people every 2 hours when they have pressure ulcers or can actually make them worse. And Barbara, so we actually met with Barbara Bergstrom, this researcher that did this, and she believes it's because we are interfering with their nighttime sleep. And that came out of her study before we ever started working on ours. So that was really interesting. So once again, making sure that we are assessing the people and ensuring that we do not wake them up. And again, you don't have to wake people up to turn and reposition them. And I loved Carmen's suggestion of if people have moved around, we probably don't need to. And I think Brittany weighed in on that as well. So on this next slide, I talk a little bit about medications and not waking people up during the night for medications. I hope that that's not being done, but frequently we find that it is. But trying to time that once again, at least at that 4-hour mark, so that hopefully we don't wake them up. But then also looking at which medications can help someone sleep better. For example, there are, I take an allergy medication, and I learned a long time ago that it makes me very sleepy. Well, did it occur to me that maybe Linda should take that at night instead of in the morning? Not until I kept falling asleep all the time. And so I switched that over, and it actually helps me sleep better at night, I think. And then thinking about some of those medications that actually wake people up and can help. The antidepressants tend to do that. So giving those timely so that we can increase people's alertness. And then considering liquid meds in the evening and night to reduce fluid intake. If we give people pills and they have to drink a lot of water to be able to swallow those pills down, we've just added more fluid load onto them so that when they lay down, it's going to increase their need to go to the bathroom even more. So thinking about some things that we can do with medications. So, and then this next one, and I love this one. This is so easy. Whenever I think of some of the little things that we can start doing that can improve sleep at night, it's getting people into the sunlight. And that can be as simple as opening the person's blinds in the morning so that the sun shines into their room. It can be serving breakfast in a sunny room that has lots of light, lots of windows. It can be doing activities, or if the weather is nice, taking people outside. so that they can get as much sunlight as possible, because the more sunlight that we can get to them, the more we can elevate their serotonin. Now, this is really important for us to remember, because remember that comes in through the retina, and as people age, that retina ages. So it's going to need a lot more sunlight than maybe someone my age or someone your age might need. So we have to have even higher, they need even higher doses to make sure that they are getting that elevated sunlight that pushes up their serotonin. It also reduces their risk of bone fracture. And we've found that the more sunlight for elders who are who have some level of dementia or Alzheimer's, it can reduce agitation. And I really believe that it's because it's elevating that, it's like an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety, and it really helps them by doing that. So sunlight exposure. Another tip when it comes to that is to share this information with families. And if families come and they want to do something to be helpful, to contribute to the care of their loved one, encourage them, if they're visiting, to sit in a sunny room, to sit next to a window, to take them outside, whether it's in a wheelchair or with their walker, or if they're able to walk independently, but go for a walk outside. And it will make a dramatic difference. And it's a way of family feeling like that they can actually contribute to the care, which I think is really valuable when it comes to family members. So in this next slide, I put up some of the challenges that we have when it comes to improving sleep. One of the first things is a lack of staff education related to the importance of sleep. And hey, just in general population, I'm not sure that people understand the value of sleep. I think we're learning more about it, but I'm not sure that people generally understand about that. So I think it's important for us to ensure that staff realize that it's really important for our elders to be able to get good quality sleep, and that things like napping may interfere with that, or that when we're taking someone for a walk, we're actually helping to discharge some of that energy so that they can sleep better at night. And it makes such a difference. And again, paying attention to some of our policies and procedures, things that we may be doing that are contributing to sleep fragmentation. I mentioned staff schedules and routines. We have night staff that have to get up, part of our elders, and then day staff. And so we're waking people up, sometimes therapy, sometimes breakfast is served really early and we're unable to, and so when my mom first moved into the assisted living, my mom liked to sleep in until 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. When she moved into the assisted living, they served breakfast at 7:30. And my mom found out that if she slept until 8:30 and didn't get down there until 9 o'clock, all the good food, as she described it, was gone. And so my mom started getting up really early. And what do you think happened? Mom was really tired, and I noticed it right away. And I said, why are you so tired? She goes, well, I have to get up early. And well, we worked it out that they actually would set aside the food that I went and talked to them, and they set aside the food that my mom liked to eat in the morning. And so that when she came down at 9, it was still available. But we could do that. We could do that, right? I just happened to be knowledgeable. And so that I was able to facilitate that. Now you all are knowledgeable, so you can help facilitate that as well. And then incorporate sleep into our quality improvement processes. Think about how we might have discussions around how well our elders are being able to sleep at night, and what are some of the approaches that were taken to that. And then we talked about consistent staffing and how they get to know inconsistent staffing can be a real barrier. If you have staff that maybe are new to your setting, or I know in some areas of the country, I don't know your area, but sometimes we have nurses that are from a pool or just coming in, whatever, that are filling in, and they don't know our elders, and they don't know what their routines are. And so that can be a barrier as well. And we struggled with that they have that very traditional model and they're not using these best practices. They're just not aware of them. And so those are some of the barriers that sometimes we have to try to break through whenever we try to improve sleep. So in this next slide, this is just one example of how we engaged people at all levels of the organization to help improve sleep, because one of the challenges that we identified in many of our campuses and our communities was that the residents or the elders went to bed too early, not because we were forcing them to go to bed or that necessarily they were choosing that, they were bored. There wasn't a lot to do. We had lots of things going on in the daytime, but then we had dinner and, TV, whatever. There just wasn't a lot going on. So we asked different leaders in the organization to come in on different nights during the week from 6 to 8. And they would share their talent or one of their interests with our elders. And what a great way. Our elders absolutely love this. And we actually learned a lot about some of the different leaders in the organization and with the talents that they, some of them could draw, some of them could sing, whatever. And it created great conversation. So we had very active engagement. And I just love it when that happens. And whenever we have that partnership between leadership in the organization and with our elders and with our caregivers. But what we found that it promoted that restorative sleep as well as building relationships, which I think is just really, really valuable. And I love it when those kind of things happen. And then just talking a little bit more on nighttime, reducing those nighttime interruptions, using high density mattresses. You've probably got those. It's a rare day when I see a home that does not have those, but trying to extend turning and repositioning, but then educating residents and families or our elders and families on sleep and the value of sleep. I had a very interesting experience when we first started on this PIP program. We had a little, we called it our napkin speech, where we shared with family members that we were trying to improve sleep and the value of sleep and how important it was. And we, so I thought I'm going to sit in some of these care conferences, and I just want to hear how this goes. Well, we shared this with a daughter, and her mom had been with us, I think, a couple of weeks or so. And this is the first care conference, so maybe 14 days. And anyway, when we told her that we were working on improving nighttime sleep and we're trying to not wake people up during the night, she said, "You would actually wake someone up during the middle of the night when they're trying to sleep?" Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a light bulb moment in that, we're all thinking, yeah, we wake people up, we're doing all these things at night, or somebody from the outside, that different perspective, like, you got to be kidding. Who wakes people up during the night, right? Mm-hmm. So it just really reinforced to me that we can, I think, engage families in helping us. And this daughter got really active in helping her mom be active during the day when she would come to visit, helping her, making sure she's walking, making sure she's going to activities, because she wanted to make sure her mom got good quality sleep at night. So it's a great way to partner with family members. And then using nighttime briefs, and somebody already mentioned that. I think we talked about that earlier, so we can move along. All right. And then I think we've talked about some of this as well, teaching staff or caregivers to reposition with minimal disruption. Don't wake people up. I will touch on this general reduction of fluids after evening meals. So because as people age, they tend to put out more urine during the night than they do during the day. So that was a problem that we wanted to address. And even though we use nighttime briefs, we still had times when those just did not work because we were loading people up with so much fluid. So one of the things that we started to do was once they had their evening meal, we did not continue to encourage them to drink a lot of water. So we tried to minimize how many pills they took so they didn't have to drink so much water. The other thing is that many of our caregivers actually passed water at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. And we're encouraging our elders to drink water. Probably not a great idea. Now, no one got dehydrated. We weren't, if they wanted a drink, we were happy to give them a drink. But what we found is that if we could pull back on that, we also looked at all of those heart medications that people take that cause diuresis, cause people to need to go to the bathroom. We looked at some of the antihypertensive, those kind of things, all those medications that tend to diurese people anyway. And we moved those to the morning. And so we wanted to do the very best. We made sure that people had the opportunity to go to the bathroom right before they were ready to go to bed. And we used the nighttime briefs, and we had some really, really great success with that. And to your point, Carmen, around we implemented what we call doorway checks. Rather than people going in, turning lights on, making noise, we just learned how to check people and looking to see the position that they were laying in from the doorway rather than entering in. And then if they needed nighttime meds, if they needed to go to the bathroom, all that, we were able to strategically time that. And that was really important and made a big difference in improving sleep. And then light exposure, I talked a little bit about this, opening the rooms, the room shades and the blinds in the morning, and then closing them in the evening. We need to, just as we need lots of light in the daytime, we need to get it as dark as possible during the night, which meant that we also needed to think about lighting. We had night lights that had built, when they built some of our buildings, that had been built into the wall, and they were white light. And white light keeps, elevates the serotonin, and it suppresses melatonin. And we, once again, were interfering with sleep from a lack of knowledge. And so we actually had to cover all of those. And we ended up working with an engineer that found blue lights that we could replace those with. That blue light will not interfere with melatonin, but the white light does. And then I talked a little bit about some of the different things that we can do. And we did, sometimes people ask this, we did use artificial lights for a few of our elders that were really struggling with night. We had MDs actually order, and it's a light when they're eating breakfast, they sit there and this light is just shining on them. It's not glaring or anything, but and it just shines and it increases your serotonin. They use it for people who also suffer from depression. And then we needed to increase physical activity. So we had to come up with some really creative ideas that we did. And I'm going to just give you a couple suggestions. Maybe these are ones that would work for you. But one of the things that we did was we did tap dance club. And residents who were in wheelchairs, we invited a tap dance club to come in and teach them how to tap, even though they were sitting in their wheelchairs. And fast forward a year, they donated their tap shoes, and our residents would tap. Now, I tapped with them one time for an hour. I thought my legs were gonna like fall off. That is so much work. I had no idea how much of a workout. And here are our elders sitting there in the wheelchair tapping away. It was so fun. They loved it. Lots of laughing, lots of fun. Another thing that we did was get up and dance. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's kind of a lull in the afternoon, right? And by the way, if we can increase sunlight exposure between 2 and 4, a lot of you have heard about sundowning. There's a lot of research to suggest that if you can increase, push people's serotonin up through the use of bright sunlight, you can reduce sundowning. And so we called it Get Up and Dance. And at 2 o'clock, we would ask all of our elders got to put in their favorite song into a hat. We would draw a song out, and at 2 o'clock we would play it, and everybody danced. The administrator, the director of nursing, all of the staff came out and they danced with our elders. And we had a lot of fun, and it would just last for the one song, might be a 70s song, might be swing, whatever. But it was so much fun, and it was a great way to encourage people in whatever they could do to engage in dancing. And then we did wall art. We put paint by number up on the wall. We had one blown up, and our elders could come. If they were in a wheelchair, they could sit in their wheelchair and they could do the paint by number on the low part of it. If they were able to stand, they could stand up and they could do it, and their families could come and paint with them. We switched it out every week, and it was a great way of just encouraging people to stand up, strengthen their muscles, and move their arms around. And so that was a really fun way to do that. And then we did travel around the world. We put, this was on a large campus, and we put different countries all around the community, and their families could go with them to these different areas. And maybe it would be Africa, and they could learn about Africa. You know, maybe it would be Europe, they would learn about Europe. And they would get a little star for each country that they had visited during the course of the week. And then they would win a prize or whatever for their travel around the world. And then they would have a discussion about what they learned about that country. And many times we would have an elder who's maybe traveled to that country, and they could tell a story, or somebody maybe who was born in that country. And it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And then we used hand weights to just get people, we have to exert that energy. And if they have limited lower mobility, we could do things that was with their upper mobility. All right. And then the next one is, I think I've got about 7 minutes here, right, Carmen?
Yep.
Am I on time? Okay. So this is, some of this isn't probably going to be new information to you, but the importance of spiritual care. When people have spiritual distress, it's important that they have opportunity to talk about that, and to pray and those sorts of things. Those are a big part of our life. And so we have to consider that when we're thinking about how we can improve nighttime sleep. And then, of course, hand and shoulder massage. We taught all of our caregivers how to give a quick hand massage. And I should send this to you, Carmen. It was a study, and I believe it's 3 minutes of a hand massage, and before people go to bed, and they slept better at night. It was like, how simple would that be? And then smiles. Smiles actually elevates our serotonin, as well as laughter. Even fake laughter elevates our serotonin. So doing things, and then of course social interaction, and then just making connections with families can be really powerful. So, and then I just mentioned a couple things about diet. It's important that we think about foods that can actually enhance sleep, and every food that you see listed on here contributes to nighttime sleep. And I can tell you that we started serving bananas as a bedtime snack, because they have a chemical in them that induces sleep. And how easy was that to serve bananas? Milk, most of us are familiar with warm milk. Believe it or not, beef. We didn't serve beef right before bedtime, but it actually induces sleep. Almonds and cherries were. And another one that we started serving, so we took dessert off of the dinner menu, and we moved it to 8 p.m. We called it Dessert Club, and we served dessert, and apple pie with ice cream induces sleep. And so we worked with a nutritionist that helped us identify foods that induce sleep. And we did Dessert Club at 8 o'clock in the evening. Another way of encouraging our elders to stay up later, and our caregivers got to interact with them. It was wonderful. So, all right, let's see. Let's keep going here, because I want to, oh, there we go. Couple, that'll be on your slides. Peanut butter sandwiches, a couple different things. And then I just want to mention, I've talked about it a little, I don't have time to talk about it much, but what we discovered is that sleep improvement helped to reduce falls because when people sleep better at night, they're stronger, and it makes a big difference. So continuing to pay attention to those people that are having falls and look to see their sleep pattern and how they're doing at night, and making sure they're not napping too much in the daytime, which was another opportunity for improvement that we identified. So next slide. I'm just going to hop through here real quick. These are in your slides, but this is our actual data, and you'll see when we had falls, whenever we implemented sleep strategy, you can see the befores and the after for improvement in falls. So next slide there. I think there's maybe one more about that. There we go. Once again, how did you sleep last night? We'll go to the next slide here because I want to talk about, and here's just some things. I've mentioned this. I want to go to I believe it's the next slide, Carmen. So I want to just talk real quickly about that. All right, because I love this slide. So there's a theory. It's called relational coordination theory. And when I started working on sleep improvement and what we could do to help our elders have better quality sleep, improve their health, I wasn't familiar with this theory, but one of the things that was clearly evident to us, it was a 3-year program, was that we were making a difference, not just for the elders, but we were making a difference in our caregiver satisfaction. And it was because we had, our elders were so much more content. They felt like we were honoring their choices and their preferences when it came to going to bed and getting up and all those sorts of things. And I came across this, and I think that this explains really well what we see that happens whenever we have people who engage together in this type of work and trying to improve the lives of our elders. And the first thing that happens is that we start to develop these high quality relationships. I've mentioned that a couple of times, but and I think that comes through shared knowledge. And that is with the caregiver to the elder. So now we have caregivers that are knowledgeable around the importance of sleep, and we can actually share that with our elders and help them understand why it is that we are doing. And a lot of it is just really common sense. So it makes sense to us, but we can also share it with family members, and family members can engage with us in helping us improve sleep. And there are things that they can do: go for walks, sit in sunny rooms, things like that. And one of the things that I've learned in working with family members is that the most important thing to them is, can I trust you with my loved one? Can I trust you? It's an issue of trust. And whenever we demonstrate that we understand how important sleep is to their quality of life, how important sleep is to their mood, to their emotions, to how they feel and how they relate and how they engage in the world. Families understand that we really care and that we're really focused on that individual person. And then we can have shared goals between the caregiver and the elder. Because we can ask them, hey, how did you sleep? Because you know what? My goal is for you to sleep really well every night. So how am I doing? How are we doing here with that? That's really important. And then families can help us with that. When they're coming to visit their loved one. Hey, mom, how are you sleeping? You didn't sleep so well last night. So why not? What could be done differently? How could we help improve that? What might the caregivers do that would be helpful to you? And then we find that we start to gain that mutual respect, because the elders understand that we really care about their preferences, and the caregivers feel like there's something that they can do. Many times when we are looking at elders, it's like, well, I don't pass the medications, or I don't do the treatments, or I'm not necessarily doing activities, and they don't always understand the value of what we're able to do. But when we have caregivers that can just do these little things, we can start to generate the sense of mutual respect. And then these high quality interactions can start to happen. I mentioned the one with the leaders in the organization coming and engaging with caregivers, engaging with our elders before they go to bed in the evening and sharing their talents. But one way that comes is through frequent communication, making sure that people understand what it is that we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve, making sure it's timely, that people are getting the information. Communication is the number one issue that we have in every organization. If anybody does that perfectly, please let me know, because you're probably worth $1 million, because it's one of our biggest challenges, because we're 24/7 and it's hard to interact with everybody. But then we start to focus on problem solving instead of blaming or blame shifting. We understand that, okay, sleep is a problem, but we're all in this together. And what can we do? Thinking about all the different things that we have learned. What can I do as an individual caregiver? Maybe I can be quieter if I'm working at night. Maybe if I see that that somebody is needs to walk or is wanting to walk, maybe I could take a short walk with them, or maybe I could help reposition them into a sunny location to help them. But just little things that anybody can do. You don't have to be a licensed professional to do that sort of thing. And then what we see for outcomes then is we see customer satisfaction. So we have happy families, we have happy elders. We see an increase in the quality of performance and the quantity of performance. And then we start to get into employee well-being, because people feel like that my work is important, that I'm valued, and that I also am invested in the outcomes. And it doesn't matter if I'm the person who's sweeping the floors, if I'm the person that's putting in a new light bulb, if I'm the person that is helping back in the kitchen cooking the food, I'm invested in the outcomes that we're trying to achieve here for our residents. And what does that come to? Employee resilience, that I can do it, or hey, we have a setback, but I can handle it. I can bounce back from that, and we can do it. And so I think that when our experience in this sleep PIP that we rolled out, and then my experience over the last 7 years since we did this, and taking it out and hearing the stories, is that it starts to create this sense of coordination across the spectrum of all the different people who work together and that come together to provide good care and this individualized care for each one of the elders that we serve. So if you want to flip to the next one, and this is my favorite quote, you've probably seen this, about Maya Angelou said, "I did then what I knew then, and when I knew better, I did better." Probably some of you are like me. There's things you heard today and you're like, "Oh, I never thought about that," or didn't know that, right? But now that we know that, we can start to change and we can start to improve on the work that we're doing. And then this next slide is just a reminder that sleep is a necessity and it's not a luxury. How many of you have heard the term luxury sleep, right? Luxury sleep. Well, it's really necessity sleep is what it is. It's invaluable. And the older we get, the more important it is to our health and maintaining ourselves. So the next slide, I think, is the big ideas. So as you think about what you learned today, and I think we have time for some time. 10 minutes. I went 5 minutes over. 10 minutes for some questions or discussion, conversations.
Yep, let's talk. I have a question. I'll kick it off, guys. Linda, back on the sunshine, it said, be careful of fragile skin, that it's important to get, you know,
Uh-oh. I think she is talking about, I'm not sure what, she's probably talking about when I said be careful of fragile skin. If you are putting elders, oh, there you're back.
Hi. Yep. Yeah. Fragile skin and the importance of sunshine before sunscreen.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah. Well, remember what we want to get it into the eyes, right? So we can, because it's going to be the retina that's going to up the serotonin. So they can still have long sleeves. We can make sure they have sunscreen, but thinking about the eyes. And so remember, if they're directly in the sun and they want to, you know, if they put on sunglasses, that's going to interfere with their ability to take that in. So we don't have to be looking into the sun to get that bright light, but if that bright light is around, we just need it into the retina for that.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? If you all could ask one, it would be so much fun. I'm making sure to press the button, everyone, that says you can unmute yourself.
Looks like we have a couple of people that had to leave us, but they were enjoying it. So that's great to know. There's just so much information about this, and
I love this.
It's so powerful.
So Linda, forgive me. Aside from the retina and the sun in the eyes for the serotonin, is it bad for fragile skin to get some sunshine for a little while?
What's a little while? What do you?
I don't know. Like, I feel like I've heard make sure to get sunshine for 15 to 20 minutes before you put the sunscreen on, so you get the vitamin D, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
That's you're probably not going to get a sunburn in that short time.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what we do in our community. I set the rules. I don't know how I ended up being that person, but no residents go outside, you know, for an extended period of time. If it's not above 60, it has to be above 60 degrees, and they can be outside for 20 minutes before they need sunscreen. You know, just as the general rule. That's what I educate all of our staff to.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Brittany.
Hi, this is Cheryl from Sage Living in Jackson. Did I successfully unmute myself?
Yes, you did.
Okay. So thank you so much for this presentation. I heard two members of the Impera group give a presentation at one of our Wyoming quality meetings. We used to have like a day and a half meeting every year before COVID. And that that drove me and my team to move forward with this quality improvement project. I called it the Night project, and it was, for us, it was the final humanizing, it was the ultimate humanizing thing that we could do for our residents to prioritize their sleep. And so and this was probably, I'm trying to think, it was right before COVID, so I would say 2018, 2019. And I would say our prioritization of sleep and individualized sleep plans for every resident is now part of our culture. We do not do rounding like we used to. It is all individual. We you know, got better mattresses. We're now using Tena products. I mean, we have not seen an increase in skin conditions or pressure injuries because of the changes we've made. So I would like to offer myself as a resource for people. I mean, it was a culture change. It was everybody, every person who was involved with our resident care working together to change the way we cared for residents, and it is worth it. It is worth it. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. That's awesome. I'm so happy that you were able to hear one of those presentations and implement that. I love it. And I love your description that it's so humanizing. Sleep is just, it has application for all of us, right? I see somebody posted, Carmen, is the sunshine through a window good enough? We live in Wyoming, and it is good enough if that's your only option. You can get enough sun through a window.
Linda and everyone, I wonder what you think of this idea. You know how it's just sort of common practice in a nursing home that a lot of residents get parked in front of a TV. And I don't mean disrespect, like the CNAs, right. I believe they're actually trying to do their very best. What else is there to do when there's nothing else to do, right? And I wonder, what if we started inviting people, hey, would you like me to bring you by the window? Would you like us to rearrange your furniture so you could get closer to the window?
Yeah.
Would you like to go down to the end of the hall and actually sit there for a while by the window? You know?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, and one of the communities that we worked with, to encourage that even more, they put bird feeders and all kinds of things right outside the window. So there would be something to look at. One of them put a fountain out. So there were all kinds of things for them to actually look at. And it was wonderful, just wonderful. So yes, absolutely.
Good. Thanks, Carrie. Well, anybody? You know what? Speaking of sleep, it's late for everybody, especially if you live in Florida. So I'll just say thank you, Linda, from everybody. You are such a great teacher, and you know this topic well, and you gave us each many things to think about and hopefully to implement as a team. Everybody wants the handouts. I'll get them. I'll get them to everyone soon. How's that in some fashion? We have so many, and sadly, it didn't work to put them in the chat box. I was so excited. I learned how to do that, and it didn't work for most people. So I apologize, everybody.
Yeah.
Linda, any last minute thought? A send off.
You know, I guess my advice is, because sometimes I think it seems overwhelming, just find one or two things that you can do, just one or two things that can make a difference, and try those. Don't take on the whole world. People are busy and, not always well resourced these days, and just do one or two things. Don't try to bite it all off. And often, you can share that with other people and they can try that. And then focus on those elders that, sometimes are the most, I don't mean they're difficult, but they pose some of the most difficult challenges for us, right? Pick a few of those and see if you can apply some of these ideas to their situation, and see if you can improve that, and then use it as a case study as you move forward to demonstrate to people that it can make a difference.
Perfect. And if you're willing to share with me what your one thing is that you might take that's doable, let me know. Either in the chat box real quick or over email. And we sure encourage you all. Hopefully you found a pretty simple, doable, practice that would enhance even in hard times. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Yep. Good night. Sleep good.
Yes, for sure.